to speak about honoring our ancestors because we just had Halloween yesterday, and it's celebrated in many countries around the world. And while the celebration has been heavily commercialized, at least in the Western Hemisphere, it's a time where people show off their costumes and collect candy. I yesterday went through the neighborhood and I saw the most outrageous, families. Very sweet. One dad was like a traffic cone, and his wife, the mom, was a donut, and the girl was a princess, and the boy was some kind of a Star Wars character. It was just like so amazing, kind of sweet, how people do that. But still, it's a huge business thing, and it has even, now that been coming to Austria, that people do that in Austria too, which was completely not done when I was a child. But in reality, that the holiday can be traced back to a British Celtic tradition known as All Hallow Tide and has become Halloween. And the word was first used, I looked it up, in 1471 and stems from three Old English words. All, of course, is every, and hallow is holy, the hello, how it's called now, and tide means season or time. And, it was believed and still is believed that at this time of the year, the veil between this world and the world of the dead is particularly thin, and there can be, a kind of a contact, and also that, the people who have departed need to be pacified. So offerings are made in different ways. The Mexican Day of the Death, when shrines are set up and, food offerings are made. And also, like when I lived in Thailand, many houses there have outside, they have a little ghost house where food offerings are presented every day, hoping, that the ghost will stay outside and be happy with what's offered there and not come inside. So there's lots of traditional rituals, have been developed in order, to honor those who have gone before us and also protect ourselves from some of them, who might have some unresolved issues, and also, try to connect with those who are healthy and have wisdom so that they will guide us. And, I also remember when I was in Malaysia many years ago, maybe like 30 years ago, I dropped into a shop where they were selling all kinds of paraphernalia to put into the coffin, of people who had died before they get burned. And there was like everything under the sun, made out of paper, like suits with ties and mobile phones and TVs, radios, small cars, cigarettes, everything under the sun to give to them, so when they come to the other world, they have all of those things available for them. It was stunning. I mean, it was so beautifully made. It was a huge warehouse full of these items. I had never seen it before. I was really blown away because it was real beautiful art objects, actually. So yeah, there's, and in our culture, because there's so much fear of death, and there's so much like, all the scientific so-called progress, which makes us even more and more afraid of death, thinking if we are dying, there's something we haven't been doing right. So we have a kind of a bit of a warped, relationship to death, but there are some cultures like indigenous cultures, who have daily rituals of remembering the departed ones. And here, in our culture, it got incorporated into the Christian religion, and now we have these 3 special days, where we do remember the saints and the souls, who have passed away. And I remember in my town in Austria, on these days, there were all of the candles were lit on the graveyards, and when you looked in the night, we looked out, it looks really very beautiful, the whole sea of lights. Beautiful, I remember that, And what I've also heard is, the candy offerings to the young people who are coming collecting is given to them because they are souls, who have recently come back and they need to be welcomed because they're very young, they have just recently returned and need to feel welcomed with some candies. So whatever the approach chosen, it's, I think, in this time, where we are standing at the brink of a new world, if we really, have our ears to the ground, we are starting to see, that something new wants to emerge. And I think, thinking back to our ancestors and the resilience and the wisdom and the experience which we can lean into if we are developing a relationship with them is going to be very, very supportive for us at this time, where there's so much uncertainty. We just know, we need to make a change in the way how we are conducting life on this planet. That's what we do know, but there's a lot of unclarity, where to start and how to organize all of this. And, remembering that we are having this long line of ancestors behind us, and at the same time we going to be, and we are ancestors for those who come after us, can give us, a sense of connectedness and also trust, that we can slow down and really look deeply into what the earth, wants to become next. And then you join into that development by making ourselves available, to be used really as a conduit for that intelligence, which is so much vaster than our own intelligence. And I think that's, what we are doing in these Wednesday meetings. And I'm so glad, that there's at least a few people interested in tuning in this way. And, to remember how much our ancestors have contributed, that we can be here right now, and that they have paved the way for us to be present at this point in history. And it has all started, with a cloud of stardust forming into a planet over 4.5 billion years ago. And now we got to this point, where we can tune in what wants to come next, not turning away in fear and not overestimating our own capacity for, thinking it through with our dualistic human minds, but rather, having the humility to tune in what is already underway and become part of the solution, not by, trying to keep things the same way they have always been, but by opening our minds and our hearts to being guided, by this intelligence, which we can also call the Dhamma. So I wanted to, take the opportunity today again to guide us in a meditation in, connecting more with these ancestors of ours and, honoring them and making known to them, that we are open to be guided. Because we know, this is a particular valuable time now around the end of October and the beginning of November, where the veils between us and the ancestors is the thinnest. So, please try to find a posture you can sustain for about 45 minutes. and allowing your breath to take you into the body. Checking in with yourself. What are you bringing to this meeting today? How do you feel, in your body? Emotionally, the heart, and your mind. And just allowing it all to settle down right now. And any, tension or stress, just allow it to be released into the earth, under us. Just allowing it to be released. And with every out breath, we can just allow our awareness, to drop deeper into the soil beneath us. Not straining or pressurizing, just, having that intention, allowing the awareness to drop deeper. And at the same time, being aware of the sense of gravity, which pulls us towards the earth because our bodies and the planet are one process. They're deeply interconnected and constantly exchange energy with each other. So these bodies of ours are so deeply rooted in the planet. Even, we can't really see the roots like we can see the roots of a tree, but it's on an energetic level that there's a constant exchange. And it's like a perception we need to cultivate because it will help us to be more real. So let your nervous system guide you. Just so the whole body can perceive in its own way. It can see in a not like we can see with our eyes, but it can intuit that deep interconnectedness. With the biosphere through eating, drinking, breathing, going to the bathroom, sweating and crying, and all of the different ways, how we discharge and ingest our environment. And then what once was basically outside of the skin is inside of the skin for some time and then released again. And that's a ongoing process, which is so every day, that we usually don't pay any attention to it. It totally escapes us. And by opening up that perception, we can reconnect with something which is always happening, but we just have forgotten it. That's, this very important work which needs to be done by our species at this point in history. We need to get it. We need to integrate that truth. We need to slow down enough to sensitize our minds that those minds and hearts can know again. Come back to the ground, the humility to slow down instead of constantly running after the next thing. We slow down and start to understand who we are. That we can't go this alone. We need to do this as a collective, and we need to find our place in the collective of life. We thought we can leave that place through science and technology, but we have reached a point where we need to turn back and look deeply into who we are. We can't escape the limitations of having an earth body. And it's good enough. It's amazing, really, if we pay attention. There's a long lineage of ancestors that connects us to the archaeological life and development of this planet, which started with a cloud of stardust. And this exercise, can help us to grow our capacity for perception. And through that, we can adjust and grow into a more realistic way of what is happening here at this point in history. It can be, sense of inspiration, and at the same time, a sense of responsibility, capacity to respond rather than react. As we are recognizing, it's much more than just about us, all of this. It's just so much vaster. And that all, these ancestors, not only, from our own family, our loved ones who have passed away, but also our animal ancestors, plant ancestors, mineral ancestors, a whole network of roots from which we have emerged. And that connects us to these ancestors from a vast, vast, deep time. It's a whole field of life which we are standing on, literally, and which we are drawing on every moment. And as soon as we allow that perception to become conscious and really work on rooting ourselves in that, a whole vast field of information starts to become available. And it might not, be like a verbal field of information, but it will be something we can sense and we can, become more and more attuned to and start to resonate with as we are doing this practice. Because the way that communication is happening is maybe different than from what we consider communication to be. And we can train ourselves to tune in, like learning a different language. A language, which works more on the level of intuition and sensing. And basically, deepening the capacity of the sense organs we already have. The sense of touch, sense of hearing or listening. It can become more attuned. By slowing down and turning towards that mystery from which we emerge. There's a massive data flow which goes, through that biosphere, and we can turn into it, or tune into it rather. As being the youngest species here, most self-obsessed and immature, but now, waking up and wanting to do our bit. Like a teenager waking up and saying, okay, I'm gonna help with the washing up and bringing out the garbage. I'm not only wanna have all of the benefits. So that kind of a waking up, We have exhausted, a certain approach, and now we can show up in a different way. We totally can do this. So many, many other species have gone before us and have done that. If you're just thinking, the first fish which left the ocean and came on land, how stressful must that have been, to have to grow new limbs, make, hands out of flippers. That was a long, long standing process. It took many generations to hold that vision. Or, when the apes came down from the trees and started to walk upright, must have been very stressful to, walk on those two small feet. Looks like impossible, and then that's what we are doing. The whole system of the skeleton, everything adjusted over time because the vision was held clearly and responded to. And this is a similar situation. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. So then as we are tuning in this way with the data flow, which isn't intellectual, notice how that feels in your grounding as a human being in life. Do you sense a greater connectedness and even, some purpose for yourself in all of this? Something which might not be possible, to put into language, but something which the heart knows. The heart knows what it is. And it opens up, like a new energy which becomes available as the heart, can stay in resonance with that depth of unfolding or emergence, which has never stopped, for 4.5 billion years, and is not going to stop anytime soon. So we don't have to do it alone. It's never been in the cards, it was always about being part of a process which cannot be understood with the dualistic thinking mind. But the dualistic thinking mind can help to materialize, to manifest that which is in service of that unfolding. But it can't lead that movement. It can only serve. And it's needed. So, understanding ourselves as part of a much wider and deeper context, brings a vibrancy into our being, a subtle joy, which is palpable. And that's, showing us this is the right way to go. This is, the opening through which a new kind of way of being starts to make itself known to us. And we are learning also to, contribute something to this process. By, making ourselves available to learn and trust, in the resiliency and capacity to respond, which is part of our inheritance. And there's also some trauma, which is part of our inheritance. We have both. And, through taking an interest, we can basically open up this wellspring of information and support. So, really inviting emergence into the vessel of our being and into the vessel of this group of ours, this small community which meets regularly and try to be a network of like-minded people, who are taking interest in how to support emergence. As we are, it's like on the edge, of what is known, leaning into that not knowing with a sense of trust and awe, because we do remember that we belong to this big network of life. And we can really sense, that we are embedded in an amazing web of intelligence that is much more than human. We can just really root in that. It's a very subtle recognition, but it can be cultivated, like any other skill, like driving a car, playing the piano, or connecting with that intelligence. It's just one other skill. You can probably put it onto your CV at this point in history, but maybe later, if you're still around. So, working with that sense of separation, which is part of our conditioning, and leaving that behind through paying attention in a very different way than usual. And that unfolds, as we engage it. Like any other skill, as we are engaging in the learning, it starts to unfold. It's an organic process. Some of the past heals, some of the patterns of disconnection as they heal and the fragmentation starts to smoothen out. A different way of seeing, a different way of being becomes available. It's a kind of a healing process of some kind of a connection which was broken on one level. Even it was always happening, but our perception wasn't able to connect with it because of the different, trainings we received about separation, about striving, about wanting to master nature. We are on the way, to remedy that through a particular way of paying attention. So we are sitting inside of that huge network, breathing, in and breathing out. That's our most subtle connection in terms of the body. If we don't breathe, for 3 to 7 minutes, the body is going to disintegrate. Then noticing, from behind us is this whole line of ancestors, and in front of us are the younger generations. And we are where we are in that long, long line, becoming conscious of what that means. And humbly making ourselves available to serve the unfolding. Knowing, that this will give us a much more lasting peace than just trying to protect ourselves against this and that threat. You're becoming an integrated human being. And remembering that the Buddha is on record that in the night of his awakening, he has been touching the earth and asking her, to be his witness, that he has done the work. He has been living what he has realized. And we can do that too. We can start to live more consciously from that place and see what happens. And as we, perceive ourselves in that long, long line of ancestors, if you want to, you can allow or invite, one of the ancestors to connect with you and give you some kind of gift or a message to support you, in your spiritual development. A symbol of support and connectedness. Just, inviting that perception to emerge in the mind, not straining for it, but just sitting with humility and interest and see what emerges. whatever, came to you, just allow it to, be absorbed in your heart, knowing, that you can always tune in and ask. It's normal, to feel confused and uncertain when there's so much change happening so fast. If we have that field of life, we can cultivate a connection with the conscious one, because we're never really able to leave it behind. But we can become more conscious of it. And that is how that field starts to speak to us. So, with the in-breath, sensing the deep non-separation, with the out-breath, relaxing into the space. And also being aware of that which knows about all of this. Awareness itself. Particular, at the end of the meditation, dedicate all of the good energy of our work, especially with the young people. Who find such a different situation than what we had when we were born. how we can support them and show them our care, and that we recognize what is going on. I think that's really important. Really being available. And slowly, feeling the gravity, body, and, coming back and slowly opening the eyes.